to order. First order of business, the next is citizen concerns. Minutes of February 15th. Again, motion to approve.
So moved. Jeannie's name is not spelled right.
Where?
She's Jenny.
Where is it not spelled right?
Under minutes.
It's right. Jenny.
No, it's I.
No, it isn't.
I know, but under minutes, yours gets spelled incorrect.
Where?
All right, we'll
Oh, it
we'll
says
stipulate
Jenny.
that everybody deserves to have their name spelled right.
So, okay, it's under Jenny. Okay, so.
See it?
Yep, so make a motion to correct that to Jenny.
Your alter ego?
It
Yeah,
is her last
yeah.
name.
It's the
Well, I looked
evil
at it.
twin.
Well, we'll scratch her out there.
Any other additions or corrections?
Did anybody second the motion? All right, I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other corrections? Are you ready to vote? There being no more discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. We'll move on to our FY19 budget. First item is there have been some, can we have a little less? There have been some errors identified in the town's enrollment figures. I know Warwick's were underreported. I think there was a change in Northfield's counts too. Have folks had a chance to review those? Bob, you found? Perfect.
Is that?
Perfect is good.
Oh, okay.
Perfect is what we go for.
Perfect is all you're allowed.
No, you're allowed more than perfect.
We know that, Jane, we do know.
Good.
Very sorry to interrupt you.
No, we know that about you.
Right there. Oh,
Not necessarily about
and,
us.
These are mine.
okay.
Ruth, I'd like if you could walk us through the assessment calculation.
The assessment calculation on,
Well, so as the number we backed into as a town assessment number, we haven't supported it with cuts, but we chose a number and have modeled a couple of different versions.
okay, so that,
Has that been updated so that the correct percentages are being used and?
that was,
Is that this one?
yeah, the percentages are accurate based on, the formula.
Okay, there it is.
So how did we, I don't remember, and I think I've come to all the budget meetings, at coming up with a figure. How did that come about?
Came up with a figure?
Yeah, the assessment figure.
It kind of came out of Bernardston Finance Committee's suggestion that they might be able to live with not not $1 million increase and not a $680,000 increase, but perhaps a $400,000. There have been a few adjustments, like some revenues found and some more special needs expenses that have also been recognized. So it's a moving target both on the revenue side and the expense side. And it looks to me like if the cuts we've identified as next ones happen, we'll be under the 400,000.
I just didn't remember okaying that figure.
No, I don't think we voted.
There's been no vote.
There's been no vote at all. So, is the committee comfortable to move on to, we had a question, I think at the meeting that we held that Ruth was not in attendance, where we wanted to better understand what cuts had been applied to get us from approximately $1 million assessment growth to less. So that's this document. FY19 final budget's dated 2/26, and it's got 14,620,947. And the column labeled first cuts, those are the ones that were applied, that if we hadn't found some more revenues and found some more expenses, would have been a $680,000 assessment increase. So those first cuts, Ruth, have been applied, correct?
Yes, yes. Do you have did you, this should be in your
Yeah,
packet.
I have it.
Okay. So do you want me to just quickly take them through the process?
Yes, please.
Okay. So
Everybody here?
can you hear me, or do I have to?
Can you hear, not are you here?
We can hear Ruth, we can't always hear you.
Okay, that's because I have a really nice loud voice. So you have your budget document in front of you, and of course, I have the wrong one. Thank you. That was, she gave me an old version. Okay, so I have the right one, sorry, David.
Yeah.
I was just confused. So when we first started this process, the administrators and I sat down and thoughtfully walked through this budget on one snowy day, and I think we spent about 5 hours. So the original figure that we were asking for was $14,620,947. So that was the starting point for the document. And we collaboratively, made some decisions to get to that number. So after that, we had to, when we got the revenue figures and we were looking at 3 different scenarios initially, we gave you 3 different scenarios of this assessment figure. And after that first one, it became apparent that the percentage increases on that would be 2.7 to over 3%. And so we then looked at the middle of the 3 categories that we had actually reviewed. And that would be the assessment sheet you have in front of you, which actually dropped what we would be expecting for revenues for $13,914,547. It's this side of the sheet, and it's in the middle, before the capital. So that would be our operating. So at that point, we went down and we looked through options. So we came up with this budget, and we thought it was good, and then we realized that we had to make some cuts. And instead of going to the whole committee, most of the elementary schools had either a little bit negative, or they certainly didn't have places to take from. But the new information on this was that our special education director, rightfully so, put accurate figures into the budget this year, really did a nice job of looking what our costs actually were. So our special ed costs were up by, almost $500,000. And the Pioneer Valley Regional School budget was up as well, and theirs was up about $340,000. So instead of going to the elementary schools that didn't really have a big increase, I talked with those individuals, and some of the recommendations that were made were in the last column. So that was when we made those extensive cuts. I'm trying to find them on what page.
11.
Page 11. Thank you, Chief. We had just gone through this. So on page 11, and when it says the first line of cuts, that means that when we realized we had to go down, we identified some cuts that would be hard, but that we could incorporate. So that first column kind of it was a step between the meetings. So after that, so on page 11, you'll see that there were two adjustments. The salary for the Pioneer principals were inaccurate, so we just cleaned that up. That was, that wasn't a big deal. The instructional assistants, Jean at that point had said, we can try to go back to, having the IAs with a different plan, and I know that Chris had talked with Jean about that, and they felt that they could take $40,000 from that, that portion of their accounts. So then, if you follow down,
So, excuse me, so this
Yep.
40,000
represents,
is that was collaborative between SPED and the high school?
this was, no, it's the, this coming out of Pioneer,
Okay,
but when talking to Chris, she thought that, they could manage.
okay.
And then Chris really didn't have any cuts that, she could make because she had done such a great job. So if you go to page, well, let's just go to page 14, you'll see $80,000. That $80,000, you're on page 14? That $80,000 is, she took out of a out-of-district placement, but we're going to put it in circuit breaker. So we've been not using circuit breaker at all this year to build up that fund. And so by next year, when we have to pay that bill, we'll have the money necessary to cover the $80,000. So that, it looks like a cut, but it's just a shifting of money.
Do I stop you there?
Yep.
I thought I understood that we were recognizing the circuit breaker revenue and either meeting an expense, not holding onto the money, but meeting an expense with it.
So for next fiscal year,
Oh, for
next fiscal year, it will be that. We're not doing anything this year, so we'll have this year's money and next year's
So you're
money.
saying fiscal 20?
No, fiscal 19, because this fiscal year, we're not using anything.
Oh,
out of
okay.
it. And
All
so,
right.
but we're getting receipts in,
Okay.
okay? Is that, okay. So then if we, back up, I think, where did it go? Let's see what else there was that, let me get my page numbers mixed up. Well, there were two more lines, 10,000 apiece. So anyhow, we did the same thing with the athletic transportation and with our referees. Those are the two accounts. And what we did was we took 10,000 out of each of those funds. And we, again, there's money in those accounts, and we don't typically use them, but we felt like we could take another $20,000. There's still money in there this year, and there'll be more money coming in next year. We never spend those funds down. So that was another savings.
So rather than moving those fund revenues into the general fund, we're moving the expenses into those fund
Correct.
revenue lines.
Correct.
Pointing to the need for a comprehensive document so we know where all of our
Right.
eggs are. Okay.
Right. So that was what we ended up essentially doing in the beginning. I don't know why it's so, that's kind of bugging me.
Here, take the
Thanks.
next thing we talk to is page 13.
Yep, okay, so then the balance of this, on page 13, it was the second set of cuts. And this was the cuts that are really, really hurt badly. It really does take away the things that we're trying to build upon, like the curriculum directors, and it's really, it's very difficult. So you'll see 173,003, that is just saying we're gonna look at restructuring how we deliver the specialist teachers that cover preps for the elementary teachers. This isn't really defined exactly what it would look like. It's going to take a little time to figure out how that might work, but I think that we'll be able to, but that's one cut that is very difficult.
And correction on spelling,
Yeah.
that's.
Oh, sorry.
Does
Yeah.
that mean that we will still have those specialists or not?
It depends on how we look at it. So I don't have the answer to that. There will be some people that would lose their jobs.
I understand that, but I think the arts are something that we have really held dear,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate to see them cut out.
I don't blame you. I agree.
So I'm just,
We can discuss
Just
some
saying.
alternative cuts.
Yeah.
This
Just
is
saying.
all, this is all
Yeah.
painful.
Yep.
oh, I know it is, but
No matter where we do the cuts, it's gonna be
it's gonna
painful.
be hurt. Yeah, but
We get to choose our,
that's what keeps our kids here a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Well,
You're right. It does make a difference. I mean, you have to balance this as a slippery slope with
Mhm.
regard to, are we gonna have, students bailing because one of their
Yeah.
favorite things is there? So you have a very hard decision to make. Anyhow, the next two items, 8,000 and 3,000, this is kind of sad too. We had spent a lot of money to do the STEAM initiative and create a plan for it, and the 8,000 and 3,000 were monies that were going to be used to get materials and things to move that initiative forward. So those would be cut. Then we have a $40,000 here, and then there's another $40,000 in Jean's lines, which comes to $80,000, and that was the curriculum director position that was going to come in and help both the elementary and the middle school with curriculum, because right now we don't have anyone that really is working on the curriculum other than the principals trying to do it in conjunction with their teachers, and that's always very difficult. And then the lastly on that line is $62,000. I believe that we can cut another bus. The buses aren't full. Again, it might be tight, but my understanding that there's a bus that goes up to Vernon, Vermont, which we're not obligated to do, but I'm trying to get a handle on how many students actually ride that bus. So far, I haven't had direct contact with the bus company or the high school, but the high school was looking into that and felt like we have only like 1 or 2 kids from the lower grades coming to Vernon. So,
Is that something that we can do, or are we under contract with
We
Ms.
can do it.
Kuzmaskas for a certain number of buses?
no, we can do it.
We can do
We
it?
cut one
Okay.
last year,
Okay.
and I thought last year we could cut 2, and now we're just gonna have to reroute the buses.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the
Yeah.
contract said X number of buses, was
Yeah.
it right?
No.
I just didn't know.
No. So essentially, those are the big pictures of what we determined we could cut, not very happily at all. And so in the end, at the back sheet of this lovely document that I seem to have trouble holding.
the last sheet, this one.
Yeah, the last
Summary.
sheet, page 15. So when we started with the 14,623,947, that was what?
23?
620.
620.
620, 946, that number. It was an increase from the prior year of $553,000. Then we decided, okay, let's see if we can drop it to the 914,547. And that showed that we had to have cuts of about $700,000. If we take the cuts that the principals, not the last cuts that are very difficult, we would have 317,432. And if you take that off, you end up with, actually, I think that's right. 320,000, it's still about $320,000 left in expenses if we take if we take the other amount off, we're still 320,000 over. So, I mean, there's just not a lot of wiggle room.
I forgot to ask at the very onset, but on the first page,
Page 1?
under school committee expense, you've got audit and MASC only. Does that mean that there's money in there for the audit and the MASC? Does that mean those are the things that were taken out?
Yeah, because at one point you had asked me to say what did that 26 represent? And when I went in, I looked at all the bills, and basically those are the things we paid out of there.
Okay, so it's the audit and that's still existing under the 10,000.
Correct.
These
Okay.
would stay.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wasn't 100% sure.
All right, so Ruth has shown that we need to consider another $320,000 in cuts to limit our assessment growth to $400,000. She's developed another document. Do we have copies for everybody?
They're sharing out there.
Okay,
Which one is,
looks like this.
I gave it to you.
this one? Is that it? That one?
Looks like this.
You should have one in fact.
Got it.
So this is an effort to provide some context and some rules of thumb that I think will be somewhat helpful as we look for additional cuts. But they're averages. You can drown in an average of an inch of water. So we need to, keep our wits about us. We have 196 current employees. 182 are eligible for health insurance, and 72% of them take our insurance. So the table that follows here, as I said, is dealing in averages. An average teacher salary is $56,000. An average instructional assistant is about $19,500. Then we took our best data on our workers' comp, our various employer costs, identified them, and then used the information just presented to provide a basis so that we divided the health insurance by the 132, we divided the workers' comp by the whole 196. You can all see 1,000 reasons why this is kind of stupid, because it's going to overstate the case in a low-wage employee being riffed, and it's going to understate. But it gives me a ballpark sense of the sphere we're operating in. So we toted up employer costs, and we looked back at last year's separation costs in terms of terminating an employee and what the kind of check we had to write to them, and found that was a $35,000 expense that was divided by the 12 RIFs, and got to about $29,000 that we'll have to subtract from our calculation. We did not impute any additional unemployment insurance, because I think our rate's pretty on the high end of things already. And we're not talking, you're holding your ear, I'm going to get louder. We're not talking about a lot of layoffs. The average employer cost savings from one RIF employee is a little over $13,000, just in employer costs. So you take that number, add it to the average of an instructional assistant or the average of a school teacher, and you can find out that if we need to cut $180,000 from our budget, on average, if we cut 3 teachers, that will yield, or 2 teachers and 2 IAs. It gives us some context here to work through. So Ruth walked us through the review of information about the items in column 1 that were already recognized. And then it gets down here to this information in bold, which was my question, and because of since the $1 million assessment increase, what I'll call the principal's budget, there was revenue and expense changes. So what we talked about at the pre-hearing of $680,000, I'm not sure where that is. But after taking the column 1 cuts and the column 2 cuts, we still need to cut 320, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, so these other options for further reducing the budget, the last third of this document, got a number of items. One is that if we could take all the health insurance savings that we've identified, which would be the retiree teachers moving from the GIC system, which is going up 10% in its premium this year, to the Maya program, we would save a lot of money. But there are contractual and legal issues and steps to take that we're not sure of. So these next cuts, I've divided into 2 rough areas. We can save about $65,000 just by changing insurance trusts. And I'm basing this on town of Warwick's costing. The district is providing Maya, a nonprofit insurance company, with our loss runs, and they will quote our insurance. But they came in level funded with Warwick, keeping benefits the same, where HCOG's going up 4.7%, or if they adopted the lower benefits, and they're not significant, but they do add up, lower benefits and higher co-pays, they would actually cut the bill 5%, which is a 10% swing between budgeting for continuing with HCOG, which is a fine self-insurance pool, but so just keeping the benefits the same and changing our current employees and our non-teacher retirees will save us non-teacher. The teachers are, retired teachers are all with.
Yeah, the contract.
Yeah, that's 66,000. According to Maya, though, we could change the retirees by the first of the fiscal year or the first of the new year. So we're still looking at that, but that's not seen as a reliable option for cutting the budget at this point. The next piece is that I'm always forgetting her name, but she's very sharp. Suzanne.
Suzanne, yeah.
Suzanne, in reading our teacher contract, identified that our contribution, our 75% contribution, is based on the HMO and not the PPO. So we've been overmatching per the contract, and I guess have done it chronically. But just reverting to the contract term would save us $35,000. That would impact 32 of 132 current insured. The PPO is a preferred provider option, and it says you don't have to stay in network, and it's costlier. So that's a savings we could take. The idea of reducing or eliminating the administrative assistants at Leiden and Warwick would save us $26,000. And then we need to make almost $175,000 in staff cuts. And per the rules of thumb, that comes out to 3 teachers, or 2 teachers and 2 aides, or 6 teachers. I mean, 6 aides. So those would get us to that number, but we've left on the table the possibility of saving $200,000 on health insurance. But that would require us moving to the proposed higher co-pays. It would require us moving teachers into Maya Blue Cross and out of GIC. It'd save at least $125,000.
Retired teachers and retired non-teachers.
Retired non-teachers are already with HCOG. Only retired teachers are with GIC. So we got a trade-off of, we could have reductions in staff to make these 175 in cuts, or we could have essentially reductions in insurance and tighten up our ship to get there. And I think a lot of us would rather not cut staff. Another thing we're looking at is too uncertain and unmodeled at this point, but there are organizations that, one, require their employees to take the spouses or partners or other insurance, period. There are organizations that require folks to take Medicare if they're eligible for it, and so you only have to buy Part B. And do we? Okay.
Yeah.
And there are incentives to get people not to take your insurance. So we're looking at FERCog's model, which says they'll pay 25% of uncovered medical expenses, provide or the spouse's copay or contribution to the spouse's insurance. That would right out of the gate add 50 insured here who are not on our insurance, that we would have to pay their 25%. So we have to calculate the break even and make some assumptions about, you know, what the take rate. Because if in the worst case, if everybody said, "Hey, this is great, I'm not moving," but all the employees that currently are insured through their spouse or partner or other employment we'd increase our expenses through this. But this is something else we're looking at. Basically, finding a way to incent our employees not to take our health insurance. And the bottom line is, the richer your health insurance offering is, the more people are going to flock to it. If your employer contribution's higher, your premium's lower, or you're got a Cadillac plan and only 25% is being borne by the employee. So these are additional options, and 175 and 26, that's about 200,000, and that's almost 300,000 in savings, but it involves $175,000 of staff cuts. The last piece that makes a lot of sense is, and it's not going to be a solution for this coming fiscal year, is looking at Pearl Roads and whether it should be closed. Ruth's model says that would save $525,000, even if it's somewhat less. It's not for next year. I can't see it happening. I think we'd be fools to build a budget on that presumption.
For fiscal 19.
Yes, but our situation, while dire this year, is not going to be any better next year.
I think Heath took a full year to have parent meetings, look at all the variables that we haven't even got to yet, as far as meeting the needs of the kids. And so I think a year out would be sort of a minimum to look at, but it is time to look at it again. We've looked at it periodically over the past few decades, and it is time to look at it again, even for the quality of education for those few kids. They would be better off, I think, with a bigger mix of kids. But we'd have to start meetings
A lot of education for everybody.
and listen to their concerns.
So I think we found a way to have a budget that increases assessments about 350 or 400,000. That's what we described here. I'm frankly dubious that our communities are going to be willing to, in addition, vote money to retire the lunch debt. Warwick's selectmen have indicated they'd like to see no increase in assessment. I will say I've never seen Warwick voters follow that kind of suggestion yet. Pat, what do you think?
I don't like it, period. I mean, I don't like the idea that we're gonna have to cut more, but I guess we're gonna have to. I mean, I know we're gonna have to. I don't like it.
I'm not happy with it. But in order to stay viable, we've got to make drastic changes.
Are we locked in at GIC in any way?
We have to see our contract.
The process, it takes a while. and
How long have
paper-
you been in GIC?
I think it's been in a long time. I think we were in it in Narragansett, and you have to fill out a form to get out before November, and they make it very difficult to be able to find the form and do any of that, but we're gonna be working on it. And I think if you, I don't know, we just have to double check, but it's not easy, they make it not easy. You know, the only other thing, you know, that I can say is, and I think the community has that sheet that shows that, you know, how much we've been paying in additional assessments, the percentage increase, shows the students that, you know, enrollment for those fiscal years. And I think that the committee's done a really nice job of that balance, that not one of those years except prior to my coming where they're all under 2% of an increase, which is, you know, very reasonable. And, you know, I think really thinking about the analysis about the students and the amount of reduction we've already made, I'm concerned that you lose some of those programs, like, and this is not to say that these would be the programs, but if we can't touch classroom teachers, are we going to be touching sports? Are we going to be touching music? Are we going to be touching, you know, the arts? Are we going to be touching the elementary schools, phys ed, art, music, the band program at the elementary school, which is second to none, and it's a feeder program. It's and I know it's about money and what people can afford, but if we start cutting some of those things, we're going to lose more students. It's just, kids come in that front door sometimes to get out the back door. You know, kids come, some of our best and brightest students at some of the little schools, they're there because that music program is so challenging and very difficult, and it makes stretch them. We can't, I mean, it's just, I'm really, really concerned about losing that programming. So I hear what you're saying, Peggy, but I think that somebody, I met with some of the parents today, but there were only the parents that were, one parent that was had a Leiden student, the other two were homeschool, school choice ones. I think that in Bob and I have talked about maybe a plan of, you know, I would call, or we could do a survey or something. We need to find out. We have not heard those voices. And those voices may say, I'm fine, I really want to stay here, Pro Roads is exactly what I want. Or they might say, I'd really rather do something else, but we don't have that information. And just by having a conversation might inform whether it's going to take a year or two to close Pro Roads, or if people might be willing, and we just don't know about it because we never asked them. No one talked to them.
Well, and we didn't, your meeting today, school closing was never put on the agenda, right? I mean.
No, it was
and
about.
I'm going to move us on, because we're
Okay.
not talking about that today. It's not going to
Okay.
settle today's problems. But I would like to hear, does anybody think it does not deserve consideration very shortly? Not as part of this budget, FY19.
Closing Pro roads you're
Yes.
talking about? Oh, I think it needs serious
All right, so
consideration.
it's on our agenda, and we'll not kick it too far down the road. We'll need to be very careful that we impute all the costs. See, it's real easy to see the savings, but you gotta also make sure that,
There's savings, but there's also, it's gonna cost us something to educate those children, no matter where we educate them. So it's still gonna cost us something.
so we don't like the cuts that we've identified. Is there potential for more transportation savings through really studying these routes and rationalizing them?
There's a potential, but where we cut one bus and then we're gonna cut a second one, I won't know the answer to that until I reroute the buses. And I have to reroute them versus, the bus company, because but then what they've done is they've increased the price of our field trips, so,
I'd like to, and are we stuck with them if we found a competitor while we're under contract with them for?
we have
for
another,
field trips?
we have
Could
another year.
And they're exclusive, even if we find, if we bought our own bus or.
No, you have a year to buy your own buses and figure it out.
But we can't
Can't use it
This year we
Well,
can't, we're under
right.
contract this year, next
How-
year the
What
contract's
about the
up.
size of the buses?
Oh, they vary.
But are we running big buses when small buses could work for us?
No, because the small buses are used when they can get up around some of those mountain roads and stuff.
I see
You
some,
should know.
I live on one of those roads, I
Yeah.
see big buses on it,
Really?
yes, in the
Okay.
ditch too.
Great.
We had spoken at one point about sped busing being so expensive. And it
We
sort of
can't hear
toward-
you.
Sped busing being expensive.
We spoke once about sped busing being so expensive and wondering about buying a vehicle that might transport some of that. Is that a viable solution, or is that gonna cost us more, or?
Well, here's the thing, so you have a van,
Right, yeah.
essentially. And more times than not, you might be able to get a couple kids to be going in the same direction, but it's the van, it's the driver, it's the monitor that has to be in with the driver, so you just have to assess all those costs. I think ultimately you could probably save some, but Chris has done a great job looking for, we have in-district special ed transportation. That's even expensive. So, could we at least, do that, or, is it viable to ask parents? I don't know, to drive, I don't know,
We used to ask parents, or parents used to do that for some compensation, but I don't know whether that's something, I
think
sort of
the
thought
parents
we
have to
couldn't do
work.
that
I think it
anymore.
went away due to
For some
insurance
reason.
liability.
I think maybe you're right.
But I do think things have lightened up a lot
I
in
mean,
terms of
I was
stupid
just thinking,
judgments.
yeah,
So it might be worth looking at again.
right.
to look at.
And also, if we had students that are going like to Smith's vocational school or any of that kind of stuff,
Do we have any right now?
I don't know. But if we did, I guess that's borne by the towns, that transportation, or
It
is
is.
it not?
It
Oh,
is
yeah,
a- It was very,
affect us.
expensive when
Okay.
Bernardston
I
had to
remember
pay
that.
for it.
I remember that.
$15.
Yes.
I know.
Well, if we had some working capital, there's a lot of savings we could accomplish.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the Northfield and Warwick Energy Committee's work on integrating our buildings, and it's to do everything on the list is about a 9-year payout. And then you start saving $200,000 a year in energy.
You have to have-
$200,000 a year, but you need to be able to pay for the $1.2 million in
You have to have
betterments.
money to make money.
Yeah, so Bernardston and Warwick are each applying for $250,000 and going after the most sensitive to address issues, and it's going to principally be here and at Northfield Elementary, I think. It's very competitive, and if awarded, that'll leave $700,000 worth of betterments. Yeah, we might be able to save money if we could afford to start our own bus company. But would you lend this district to start a bus company?
I would if I could,
Looking
but
at
I
our
can't,
balance
so I
sheet?
won't.
Yeah, so. So I have on the agenda combining elementary and junior, senior. Does that already happen? Am I just?
No,
We should look at it. Running two buses over the same road an hour apart. I think should be good. We should
but
really,
you know what the thing is? It really doesn't save us any money, because we pay per bus per day. We pay for the bus.
we'd get rid of some.
Not if we put all the kids on at once, we wouldn't get rid of them. That's why I went to getting rid of the one bus.
You know what? The bus company would save money. Maybe we could do the same thing. We should look at doing the same thing we do with our teachers union midstream. We sign memorandums. And we can close buses for lack of need or lack of ability to pay the bill. We could, any Massachusetts municipal contract has a termination clause. And this is not low-hanging fruit, folks. This is not gonna be easy, but we gotta look at it all.
I think we need to really think seriously before we mix the 6-year-olds with the 14-year-olds. Maybe 6-year-olds with 18-year-olds might work, but you get the little guys and the middle school kids, I'd be really anxious. That's
Okay.
just me.
So we're down to alternative special needs transportation. I suppose we hit it. Anybody got
we
anything
did.
more on that? Okay. School lunch. First off, I think I saw or read that we're not really doing that well this year, according to the books. We're losing money. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit, yep.
A little bit, like 30 or 40,000 year to date?
Yeah.
No, it would, the projection from the auditor that came, he thought it would be between 30 and 40,000.
For the year.
For the year, right,
So this year we'll add 30 or 40,000 to our school lunch debt.
approximately.
What can we
Who
do?
wants to sell buying that debt to the towns? Raise your hand.
Why?
So where we need to go is pretty clear to me. First, we need to know our costs, and that means we should run the whole program out of the revolving fund, and then we should make adequate appropriations from the general fund to it, because it's in deficit. But I don't see, Bob, you won me over to, let's let the towns vote to retire this, but I'm back to where I was before. It's the school committee's responsibility to take care of this mess.
We've already spent, I mean, the way we're looking, we got 277 in free cash, that's gone, and we're gonna have to take money out of stabilization just to meet our bills. And that doesn't include anything paying on any lunch program, right?
Well, obviously, you're gonna know that the finance committee and the select board have not met together yet when I say this. But the finance committee is looking at a 2.5 override. And that's with doing what he said. I've already used up all the free monies I've seen.
All right, committee, I abused my chairmanship. What do you think? Have an alternate view?
I don't know. I really don't know. We need to do something with it. I can't imagine. I mean, I know Gail has worked like crazy to do all the things she can think of to get that debt down, and it's gone down, but we haven't erased it. And I don't know what you do to run a lunch program any cheaper than we're doing. I really don't know.
When the food that's ordered, is it all being eaten by the students? Is my question, and that would necessitate us being at lunch to observe.
What do you
How
mean?
much is
Are they
being
are they
wasted?
eating?
How much is being wasted? How much
But
of
they're
the,
paying for the lunch.
right, but
Whether
like,
they eat it or not, they're still paying for it. The question should be,
not those that
why
have
is it
free
being
lunch,
funded?
Yeah.
not those that have free lunch are paying for it.
Yeah, we get more from
We
that.
get more from free
Yeah.
lunch
Question should be,
than,
we do.
why
That's an
is it
important
losing
why.
money? If the state subsidizes free lunch, or the feds, I don't know who does that, and then everybody else pays their lunch, whatever it is, why is it losing money?
It could be a matter of break even. That is to say, we don't have enough sales, we
Yeah, I
need
think
to, we need
that's-
to move more meals. Because
But
we've got so many costs that are fixed. The cook can make twice as many mashed potatoes. The potatoes don't cost that much. But when we only have, I mean, if you look at things, the high school lunch program sustains itself. It's the elementary schools where we have a problem. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I think feeding kids is really important. We're gonna try to educate them, and for kids where that's an important source of nutrition, it's probably one of the lowest cost-effective things we do to get some effective learning.
They're not gonna function without proper nutrition.
Sorry.
Hi. It's tough to cut the budget, I understand that, but think about something else besides cutting, and that is this. We lost a lot of students from last year. Okay, we lost a lot, $100,000 to $200,000 school choice income, just as a guess, all right?
Where'd you get those figures from?
I mean, here's what
I
I'd
don't,
like
come
to
on,
do.
he's got the floor. Let's,
No, just,
please,
Here you go.
thank you.
keep it short.
Now, those need to be updated, right? I would ask that you do that, all right? Now, short. If you had an environment that caused a lot of kids to leave this school coming into this year, think about changing the environment, make it less toxic. It's not gonna solve all your problems, but it's a start. I'm not gonna get into specifics in terms of people, okay? But you guys, you're smart people, you can figure it out. Think about it, all right? Or you can cut and then more loss next fall. And that's not a good thing.
Anything else from the committee?
I
Jean?
just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
note that when the auditor came, he thought that only having that much debt at the end was not, that was a good thing. I don't think it's that unusual for districts to lose money on the food program. It's
So-
not supposed to be making
So
money.
this is a
Ongoing,
potential $30,000 or $40,000 loss, and this is occurring in the context of no supplemental appropriation to that loss.
Right,
And
right.
next year, we have 50,000 in. So we're gonna bleed out some more this year, but with a general fund appropriation of 50,000 against the current year loss of 35-ish, we'll actually, in about 1 million years, retire that debt.
I still think we should ask ask the towns to put something toward it to try to get that, because it's harming us in multiple ways,
Right.
including, E&D, and
what?
I know what the towns are going through.
If it were feasible to get a town to appropriate some or all of, assume a portion as theirs and then deal with it, and if we could have some sort of an intermunicipal agreement that where various towns says, yes, we recognize this is our share, and it's our job to deal with it over the next 5 years, we could create a condition where towns who can afford to help us out by retiring their share sooner than others could do so, and without the risk of being asked to come to the party again after having paid their share and get a new share.
Well, maybe we need to work up a, to what, 250,000 using these. I would assume we'd use the same.
Use the
percent
operating percentage.
Yeah.
Over,
percentage.
3 years or over 5 years, and just have the numbers there for the towns to, oh, okay, so that's how much it is.
Nobody, we're a union, we're a regional district. Nobody suggested that Leiden should take its $153,000 line, and that's theirs. I think we're mostly in agreement to apportion it according to the operating percentages.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, yeah, we need to give them an amount before we can.
I remember years and years and years ago, we did have a line item in our budget that subsidized the lunch program. And to make it balance back there, probably when our budget started causing us problems, we took it out because we just needed the money to spend it on whatever else, staff or programs or student supplies, whatever. So that is the time when the lunch program started getting the deficit. And I bet it's been 25 years.
Probably.
It's been a long time.
Been at least 10.
Yeah.
All right, so,
David,
yes.
listen, I was going back through all the papers I saved from coming to all these meetings. And I was starting to throw some of them out, and I think I made a mistake. Because I got back to 2008, and I found that the lunch program in 2008, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, had a deficit of $60,000 at that point. This is not new. This
Right.
goes back, that's Kevin Courtney's days.
You're right, I did.
And my thought when I looked at that is, how many school committees have ignored this? Let's bill all the school committee members.
Take it out of our salary.
Yeah.
Right.
Who's your employer and we'll contact them.
You,
No.
I wanted to briefly hit on, with respect to the school lunch debt, hit on the idea of borrowing. The only way borrowing would benefit the district would be if the towns did. Well, it's not a borrowable expense, it's a loss, it's an operating loss. It's just, the only thing you could borrow for would be a revenue anticipation note, but where's the revenue? So, it's not like the technology debt. That was debt issued to actually buy something that we brought through the door. This is the guy going to the bank with a credit card debt saying, I want to refinance it.
Cost of doing business.
But the state would never approve us borrowing to cover that debt, and it wouldn't help our balance sheet. Even if the school committee would do it, we'd have the liability for the borrowing, and we'd use the funds to take down the debt. We'd just move the debt someplace else on our balance sheet. Wouldn't help our situation, I don't think. All right. Next item is essential office sharing. Perhaps, Ruth, you could describe what our proposed budget is funding, which is 3 months of an assistant superintendent and a half-time superintendent
The budget manager and the
at a half-time
superintendent.
rate.
And there is some money in there, there's some money in there for technology director. That position's still in there, not that I think, we should get rid of that.
Part-time?
The full-time salary's in there, but we
Okay.
could definitely do a part-time.
Okay.
Well, we should leave the money in there, whether we
Right.
get that service by, the position's currently open, whether we
We
fill it
advertise
in-house,
for
we fill it with a
Right.
staff member, we fill it with a consultant,
Whatever.
or we fill it through a shared central office scenario.
Right.
We-
Right.
We're gonna need to pay.
Definitely.
You're gonna have to
You
have
can't take the
something
money
to come
out.
to the table.
Mhm.
That's about it in
So we
there.
have, okay, and so the committee voted, well, this is under 19 budget. Business manager, we're half funded, half-time is funded.
Yeah.
And we don't yet have a comprehensive budget document.
Well, you do. It's that one that the auditors, but I think maybe you and I should sit down and go through it and see
Yeah,
what
because
it is that
any
you
kind
don't
of
like.
report that, well, it's generating some garbage numbers, so it's not very
Yeah, well,
inspiring.
a friend of mine showed me where some of this, there's some back that need, in the back, what has to get fixed, and then it magically fixes itself.
Okay.
Just
So
haven't
maybe
had
it had
time
a
to get
circular
this right.
argument or something?
Huh?
Maybe it had a circular argument.
Maybe, I
So
don't know.
underneath superintendent's salary, 70,000, is that gonna get us a part-time superintendent or a full-time? I mean, what's,
Not full-time.
Well, I took the 140,000 divided by 2. essentially. Took away the travel. I mean, we took a lot of money out.
I know, I'm just wondering if that's gonna cover it. If it doesn't, what do we do? I don't know.
Got another teacher? I mean, there's no solutions. I mean,
We'll keep looking on, working on our list of potential cuts, and we get to pick our poison.
Yeah. And not to have any travel in there. You know, I mean.
Pat, I feel your pain, but come on.
I know, but.
We gotta do this.
I know, but I'm also thinking we've got to get somebody to be our superintendent, and we have 5 schools. Can we say, ride your bike to places? I mean, I don't know.
that would be negotiating with whoever you
Yeah.
All right,
decide to do.
well, let's just keep in mind that at this point, yes, we want a viable, workable budget that's not gonna increase the deficit, and it's gonna meet our responsibility to educate kids. But when we give the towns an assessment letter and cross our fingers and go to town meeting and hope that it's passed, we're not done. We weren't done last year, and we're not done this year. We've got to stay on top of this budget. We cannot incur more deficits. And so this is our model, but we can't go to sleep having sent the treasurer's letter to the towns. Our work is going to be continuous. Yes, Peggy?
So how realistic are these 4 potential savings under health insurance to happen for the next fiscal year?
Well, I think the changing from HGOG to Maya is pretty realistic, but we are providing Maya with the data they need. When you go from one insurer to the other, you have to provide loss runs, you have to provide them with a lot of paperwork so they can competitively bid. By the way, Ruth is having our liability and casualty insurance bid or quoted,
Yep.
and that's happening in a few days. So we could see some savings as a result of some competition there. So that 66 is good. The $35,000 savings for following our contract and not over subsidizing the Cadillac insurance, I have a question into school council about the issue of estoppel, which is when you haven't been enforcing a law. Maybe you have to, before you go out and write somebody a ticket, you have to publish that you're going to start enforcing the law. I don't know if it applies. It applies in some kinds of contracts that, you know, we may have a contract, business contract, and we didn't pay attention to this term. You can't just all of a sudden, 7 years into the contract, say, wow, we're changing. So we need to find out from council. But I think it's pretty good. We're going to get it on the backside that I fear that if we change the deductibles, that the school might be responsible for the difference under the contract. But you can't have it both ways. So I think that 35,000 is, but the other 2 pieces, which involve changing the co-pays, actually reducing the maximum yearly out-of-pocket benefit, but making outpatient surgery go from 0 copay to $250, and hospitalization surgery go from 0 copay to $500. We have to find out what we're allowed to do, and it may be that we find ourselves responsible for those under the terms of the old contract, but we find a way to fund that irritating factor that's keeping us from making a change.
The town of Greenfield, when they made that change, the first year, they reimbursed the people for the additional,
Out of
amount.
pocket expense.
But it was still a big savings for the town. So, I mean, unless you happen to have a whole lot of people having surgery, it's,
Well, and one of the upsides of not having the premium go up 10% or 5% is that the employee's share doesn't go up. So there is some benefit that goes to the employee as well. Any last words tonight, folks? Cut through the agenda.
if we could save the 291,000 that those four add up to.
All right, I'm suggesting that we take them in two chunks.
Okay.
Likely is the 66, which is just changing insurance companies but not changing the deal,
Okay.
okay? And 35,000, which is just following the deal that we inked.
So it's roughly 100,000.
So that's 100,000.
Yeah.
There's another 200,000, but there's timing. There's a lot that I don't know, but we have reached out to school council, and personnel is their specialty, so we'll be in good hands.
Jane had a question.
Jane?
I've been hearing all year about how Northfield has so many more students than they had last year. And when I looked at this, they don't have that many more. And I noticed that their teacher's budget line has boomeranged almost $100,000.
Can I tell you
Far
why?
bigger percentage than any other school.
Is it the shape of-
Explanation.
No, it's the special ed programs that we put in there. They're district-wide programs, but they're housed in Northfield. So the cost of
Northfield has more students, as we've been hearing in meetings, but the special needs are being housed there.
go ahead, Megan.
So I just want to clarify, I hopefully didn't ever say that Northfield has more students, but we did have 20 unexpected students enroll over the course of the summer,
But it doesn't reflect one.
because we lost more sixth graders. So we had a larger exiting class than we had anticipated coming in, and then 20 more, so it actually balanced out. So in addition to that, because we were projecting fewer students due to the larger sixth grade leaving, we had reduced the teaching staff, expecting lower enrollment for this current year. And as it turned out, coming up to the end of August, we did have 20 more than we had anticipated, and had to hire another staff member back at the last minute. So that increased it back up again compared to what we had projected.
So the 20 weren't spread evenly across the classroom.
There was some evenly, there was distribution, but there were clumps in places that put our numbers too high at grade levels.
I don't mean to pick on you.
Nope, that's okay, I just
But
wanted
it jumps off the page.
And one other difference in the teacher line item is that the special need tutor position is just moved into that line item. So it's zeroed out where it says special need tutor, and it's put into the teacher line. So that makes it look like a greater increase, but it's decreased in another spot. And I think it's noted there as well.
Megan, is some of the Hive and others salaries put in your budget, or doesn't Chris put some in, or no?
No.
The IAs?
Not the high, not the,
No, but
the
How about-
I'm
Oh, the
confused.
behavior program?
I'm confused. So they're showing up in your budget and not the special needs budget?
She's saying they're in the sped budget.
That's not reflected in our teacher line item.
So we don't have that.
They say
So-
numbers
so
don't
it-
lie, but they sure mislead.
Yeah, they do.
All right, folks, our next meeting will be on 3/8. That was scheduled to be the budget hearing, but the 14-day notice requirement wasn't met. So I chose the following week, Thursday the 15th, and the administration has advertised that. So the 15th And we shouldn't need the traditional 30 days to get a letter out. The following week, the school committee meets. In full session, we'll act then 15 plus 7 on the 22nd, we'll act on the budget, and coming out of that, we can get a letter to the towns.
My next question is, sorry,
Just so you know, I won't be here on the 15th. I'll be in Idaho, unless you want me to sign on.
You can watch us on YouTube.
It's so exciting. You can watch us
are we
on
having a
YouTube.
Yeah, that's
subcommittee
why I
meeting
was-
on the 8th
Yes, we
Trying to
will,
get
we
away
will, the
from
budget
all
committee
this. Yeah.
will meet on the 8th.
at,
I believe we're at, good question.
We had
Which-
written for 5 for the budget hearing, but,
I would prefer 5:30.
budget
Does that work for the rest
subcommittee
of you
at
folks?
5:30.
if I'm late, I'm late. I'll be working
So
late.
5:30, and we advertised the hearing on the 15th at 7?
Yes, 7. And I'm assuming that the meeting on the 8th is really just to talk about if we've made any headway on the things we were talking about.
Well, I'm hoping that we can bring things together so that the committee can vote a recommendation coming into the hearing the following week. And then we will hear from the public, and then the full school committee will meet the following week
Okay.
to decide on the budget. That sound reasonable?
David,
Yes.
may I say, close the table for just a second, I want to give you something that will be gone, you're adjourning now.
Yes.
Thank you. This is something that superintendent prepared, you've got one, so you can, prepared in October 1st, 2016. And what it is a breakdown of all the school populations featuring school choice at each individual school and total enrollment in the district and all that. And this lady here, you were questioning my numbers, and I
I
questioned my
was just
numbers.
wondering where you were getting your
Well,
numbers.
I questioned my numbers myself, and that's why I'm handing this out, because I think that it would be a very good idea to update these numbers to see where we are now, okay? I don't know whether anybody here can give me an explanation as to what, well, I know one person probably can tell me how many kids we lost. But I think it's good for this committee to understand just exactly what we're up against, okay? So,
And why they were lost.
and why they were lost?
Absolutely, if they don't live here anymore, that's a loss.
Yeah, and
And it shouldn't reflect on anything.
no, I understand. In fact, Vernon right there is understandable. They went from 600 employees down to nothing.
600 student,
Employees up there at the plant.
All right, I'm ready to go
Thank you.
home. Listen, I didn't appreciate the aspersions you cast. You probably didn't on, whoever caused the problem that made us unattractive to school choice. I have my ideas, and I think we're past the point of pointing fingers and casting blame. We certainly need to learn from our mistakes.
That's the key point.
But there is a lot of credit or blame to go around, and it doesn't all belong anywhere. You're kidding yourself if you think so. So, motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second?
David?
This will just take a minute, so if it's okay. On the assessment sheet, I just want to point out that there's I think, on this print, where it says operating budget, assessment, blah, blah, this sheet here.
That's right.
217,218 is FY18. I'm assuming that should be FY19, because the figure agrees with the budget figure for FY19, the 9 million.
Say 19.
Just in the head
This
here.
sheet here, the one that has the assessment.
This should say 19. This should say. should have
Is that
17.
mine?
Okay, yeah.
Yes, Martha, you're correct.
Where's the 19 missing?
It's,
Oh, 18.
Is that mine?
the last
That's
bold.
mine.
It says FY18, it should be
Right down at the
FY19.
bottom one.
Okay.
Which goes to my abhorrence for this FY 16,
I
17,
know.
FY 18, 19.
But that's the
Let's
figure,
get with the
that
program.
9,052,786 agrees with what the budget says for the assessment total. I'm assuming that's 19.
All three of those years are correct on that one.
Well, no, down below there's a comparison, but
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the line you're talking about, should say total
This sheet here.
assessments 2018/2019, fiscal year 19.
that's the
And my question is this, is the health insurance figure has gone down to $1,976,000. And I know that retirees are getting about $1 million, so are you saying, are you projecting that we're gonna be actually paying less insurance for the people working in the building than the people that are retired from the building?
I couldn't say that. I mean, this year, we're spending about 1.4 million with HCOG, that's our current employees, and our non-teacher retirees. And then we're spending about 1.1 million on current retired, or on retired teachers with the GIC. So
That's 2.5.
there is more testing that needs to occur of the adequacy of our current budget and the adequacy of using it as a basis. So we're still, but the work that Suzanne did on take rate, the number of subscribers, looking at invoices, this is tightening up pretty well to my satisfaction.
So there was a motion to adjourn and second.
And seconded by,
Me.
thank you.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstaining, abstain. None. Thank you, everyone.
Can we-
Thank you.